All right. Yo,
All right.
I gotta, I always, whenever I have an artist on here that, or, creative on here that has music, we always gotta play something. So, I'm gonna play something real quick.
All right, let's do it. Man.
This is my favorite track off this project.
Okay.
Yeah, because, it's got, you're like the... I had Mad Wiz, Radimus.
You ain't fucking know.
Riz. I haven't had History yet.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I've had almost most, the majority of like Mobile Club on here. Yo, Andrew, aka Fifth Guy, man. Yo, I appreciate you coming in. Welcome to the podcast. So this is your project right here too that we're listening to. Yeah. So what you produce this beat or?
So this is. It's a good opportunity for me to clarify. I'm a record producer in the original sense of the term. It's only in the genre of hip hop where producer is synonymous with beat maker.
Yeah, with the beat maker.
In every other genre of music, it's understood
mixing,
what the role
master,
of the producer was. Yeah, recording and also having a factor in the mixing and mastering as well, of course, but really being the creative director, the connector.
Yeah.
The one who is saying like, okay, I got this homie who plays saxophone. I got this homie who sings. I got this homie who could spit a hot 16. I got this beat that I've received or that I co-created with, a fellow producer. And I have this vision of this concept of a record, of an individual song or an entire album. I'm going to mastermind the whole thing.
Yeah. Just like, it's kind of like being the facilitator of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
totally.
the reason why I ask you about this, because I've thought about doing the same. I don't produce, I've made beats before. I don't like pursue it. You know what I mean? I just do it as like a hobby and kind of just for fun. But I've also, through my times of being in radio and, knowing all the artists that I know in the city, I've always that's something that I've always wanted to kind of do is just put together what essentially you would call like a compilation album. You know what I mean? Of like all my favorite artists. Was that was like something that you came in to do, right? That's like
totally, man. Yeah. And beyond that, for me, starting out, I knew I didn't want it just to be a compilation album.
Yeah.
Because a true record producer uses artists and beat makers and producers as their instruments, as a sense. You can be as creative and expressive through other people as you can through just yourself.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of skill to be Quincy Jones or a Diddy or even a DJ Khaled. I know a lot of people shit on Khaled, and I got my own feelings and takes on him as well. But it takes a lot of skill to be able to have vision and be a likable person enough to get these different people together. And that track, Transgression, is the perfect example of like a record producer goal that I don't think anybody else would have been able to do. And that's not bigging me up. It's just I know how hard that was for me to do, especially back then when like Ab-Soul was at the peak.
Yeah, it was what, 2019, right?
Nah, when I recorded that track, that was like 2016, 2015, man.
Okay, but the album came out in 2019 though, right?
Yeah, exactly,
okay.
yeah.
Right, yeah.
But when I got that Ab-Soul verse, that was one day after These Days dropped.
Okay.
So whatever year that was, we could do the research, but it's all a blur.
Well, it was crazy too. It's interesting too because you had a lot of like pretty, especially during that time, you had a lot of like big features on that. Speaking of Ab-Soul, you had Wretch, you had Dash, all those guys were kind of like making moves, and you had Fayshawn.
Yep.
From Cali.
One of my favorites forever.
Yeah, I know. I've met Fayshawn a couple of times. I used to work at Mass Pill. I don't know if he's still over there, but he was signed to them at one point.
Yeah.
He's super cool dude. But like, what were you doing beforehand to kind of like build these relationships with these dudes?
Well, the fifth tape was a 5-year journey.
Yeah.
Some people like, excuse me, people from like my hometown know the true origins of it. I really was just always a hip hop head growing up. From a very young age. I'm the youngest of 5 brothers.
Okay.
So I have 4 older brothers. I'm the 5th son in my family. So being the youngest and having like 4 older brothers who all grew up in the 90s and were breakdancing and, doing graffiti and really into the culture, I got to soak in all of that game at a young age. So out in LI where I grew up, I was like touted as the most what would you say, most educated hip-hop kid around.
The hip-hop historian of the neighborhood?
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, I meet Mad Wiz eventually years later. I'm like, damn, I'm not shit. Like, Mad Wiz knows every little detail about everything.
How'd that interaction go? Meeting Madwiz, what was that like?
I actually have that on video. The first time I ever met Madwiz. Yeah. It's on video on Instagram somewhere. But you know, growing up for me, I knew I always wanted to do something in hip hop. Back in middle school and like early high school, I used to try to write rhymes, and I was nice at writing, but I was trash at delivering vocals, honestly.
Yeah. Was it a situation where you like weren't like necessarily like a fan of your voice?
Yeah. It was exactly that. I just wasn't confident enough.
Yeah.
So then I went over to making beats, and I had an SP404 because I was like loving Doom and Dilla at the time. Mm-hmm. And me and my boy David Noriega, who goes by Blank Noriega, who made 85% of the beats on the 5th tape.
Okay.
Him and I got really close, and we had a little crew we were making music with. And as the years progressed, you know, me and Dave just really locked in heavy, just him and I, you know. And by the time I was in college, my first year, I was going to University of New Haven in Connecticut.
Okay, yeah.
I had a good year there, but I was like, this really isn't for me. I want to be back at least like near my hometown, a little bit closer, so I can continue to work with Blank. So I transferred to Five Towns College in 2011, and at Five Towns is where I met like many people who are on this album. I met History. Yep. I met Chris Watts. I met Iron Chef, Money Mac. And
speaking of Money Mac, I just want to interrupt real quick. What's the name of the song with him on it? It's one with Wretch, right?
He's on 2 songs actually, but yeah, Iraq Airports with Wretch. Yep.
Yo, I had never heard of him before, and I like actually like was like, all right, let me fuck with his music. I like actually looked it up after that. I fuck with him. He was dope.
Money is crazy.
Yeah,
man.
Where's he from?
He's from Hempstead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Nah, Money is the god, and I feel like he has a lot of dope stuff out there, but he's one of those artists who has an entire unreleased catalog that is like his
crazy
illest work. You know, and I believe in Money Mac so much still. Like, I would love to be able to lock back in with him and make some stuff. You know, so at Five Towns, I got to meet all those cats. But for me, it was really connecting with History that changed everything. Because History linked me with King Critical, who is Heaven Williams now. He linked me with Radamiz, linked me with Madwiz, and the whole extensive BK fam, you know? So meeting all of this talent, I was just like, what the hell did I just find? You know, just like this entire universe of artists who Blank and I have been looking to work with. And I just knew, okay, I want to make a project of some sort. I was already working on a project that was just going to have like Long Island homies or other people I knew. But like meeting all of them, I was like, okay, I want to make this project with all the homies on it. But why not try to reach out to a couple OGs or legends or people who I really respect?
Yeah.
And I just made a list, you know, and I can really say, looking back at that list, I got 90% of the people I wanted on it. Sky Zoo, Fashawn, Wretch, Kid Daytona, Dash, Ab-Soul, Tragedy Gaddafi, all these cats plus more, you know, and I knew it was like crazy to a lot of people, and it was crazy to myself, but I was like, yo, there's nothing wrong with just sending emails out. You know, that was like my thing. Back then, people knew, like, I would just be looking for artists' managers and find them on Twitter or something, and I would just write an ill email. It wasn't like the most polished thing, but my goal every time I wrote one of these emails to this artist or to the manager of the artist was to just show them that I was a real hip-hop head and that I genuinely messed with their artists, you know, and like genuinely show that I'm a fan first. And most importantly, let them know that I had bread for them off rip. You know? So that strategy worked, you know, most of the time. And so some features were more difficult to get than others, but really my intention with the project was to showcase the ability of my friends who I was making music with and show that they could stand shoulder to shoulder
with these bigger names,
with the OGs, you know?
Yeah, word. And one thing that was super interesting to me was I forgot the name of the song.
Who's on it?
It might have been the one with I forgot. Wow, I'm blanking on the name right now.
It's all good. It'll come back to you.
Yeah, whatever. It'll come back to me at another time. To walk me through some of walk me through the moment when you got, so you put these two, levels of artists together, like the up and coming with the established who are are definitely like hot in the moment, right?
Yep.
Walk me through what it felt like when you get these tracks back, right? Like when you first heard the Ab verse and you first heard the Wretch verse, and like the moment in the studio when you finished that, were they in the studio?
Those two records, which a lot of people don't know, I was in the studio with that.
Okay, that's what I was about to say. Yeah,
were you in the studio with them? Or?
Yeah.
I engineered those sessions which for me, these are the things people don't know about the fifth tape, were like my trophies. Having Ab Soul rap into my mic that I had to hustle to get the funds for, have the homie Resh to do the same thing. That was like one of the biggest accomplishments of my career and life period. So I was in the studio with them engineering those sessions.
What studio were you working out of?
We were just working out of the home studio in LI and Blank's childhood home. We had Ab Soul chilling, blazing up in there. Meets Blank's parents, everything.
That's awesome, man.
And then with Wretch, we did that at my homie Vidon's studio.
Okay, I know Vidon. I've met Vidon before. I met him at the Radimus shoot. I forgot which video it was. But
let me just say on air right now, Vidon is probably the most stand-up person I've met in the industry thus far. He's always looked out, always shown love. Such an easy person to work with. And man, Iraq Airports was easily one of my favorite records on the whole project.
Yeah, the beat on that was crazy. I would probably say that and Transgression was probably like my two favorite tracks. Cause I just fuck with Wretch. I like Wretch. I've always liked Wretch.
Yeah, me too, man. And Wretch, people see him wilding out and all this stuff, and I look forward to him being out again. But something I just want to say is that Wretch has always shown me love and has always just been like a stand-up person. I feel like people see this image of him wilding out and doing all this crazy stuff, and that's him as well. But at the same time, he's not some disrespectful dude to like people he knows, so it was really ill to connect with him on that. And to answer your question, how did it feel to get these verses done and back? Once I got the first few, I was like, okay, I could keep going. Sky Zoo was the first person who really got on the project and was willing to accept my invitation, and he's always been one of my favorite rappers of all time. So to get Sky first is what really gave me the motivation to go on.
To keep going, And you said this was over a period of how many years?
5 years. 5 years. When I first started the fifth tape back in 2014, I thought I'd be done with it in like a couple months. And it wasn't the case.
Yeah, well, it's better that you probably did it that way, because it actually, when you listen to the project, it came out as like a solid piece of work rather than just, again, like the compilation, just like, if we could go back to it, we could go back to like, I think I kind of can get the idea of where you're disagreeing with DJ Khaled kind of vibe goes for, because it's just like, he puts together these albums with just like, look at all these big names, and the songs don't necessarily like work together. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of just like putting shit together just for the sake of saying you can put these big names together when it's you know what I mean? It's a little bit more important than that, I think, But it's hard to say when you're at that level. You're just like,
Yeah, of course. But one thing that obsesses me about the industry sometimes, or certain projects, is that I feel like there's a lack of attention to detail.
Yeah.
Even just when it comes to the sequencing of tracks, the structuring of how tracks are even built, the care regarding the concepts. And for some of those bigger industry albums, that's what I feel like is missing. It's like, damn, I would have done this differently. Not that I'm the voice of reason, but for me, the fifth tape was like finally a chance to say, this is mine. Like no one else could, say, nah, don't do that, or change this or change that, because I've worked on a lot of albums with different artists around that time, and all of them were dope and fire. But I knew I wanted something for myself that I had like the last say on. You know? Yeah.
I feel you. Yeah, that's always good to be able to like be in control of like what you're doing,
Word.
But there's a lot of other stuff that we could talk about, besides the music. You're a super interesting dude, man. Like, I always see you're traveling. You're always in another country. you know, some of the things that I want to talk about, and we'll get into your podcast as well eventually. But some of the topics that I wanted to like cover with you were, you know, the basis of like where this or the beginning of the journey began. You know what I mean? Like where you started being like, I'm going to be in other countries. I'm going to be exploring different cultures, things like that. Where did that come into play, or when did that come into play, or what when you were coming up and as a young kid, like made you want to, you know, explore those things?
No doubt, man. Yeah, I think it was a natural trajectory for me because I'm a first generation American.
Yeah.
You know, my mother's from Jamaica, my father's from Iran, and they met in England. So I kind of, we were raised in Long Island, New York.
Yeah.
So growing up, I kind of knew that I had a lot of different energies within me and cultures. So growing up, I've never went to Iran yet. I'm hoping to in the coming years, but I would go to Jamaica often as a kid. And I think just from like being able to see such different landscapes and traditions and eat different foods and all that really influenced me at a young age to see that there was so much more than just Long Island, New York City, America at that. So for me, what really influenced me to begin doing my own travels was around the same time I transferred to Five Towns back in 2011. I was going through a little bit of a health crisis. I was having some stomach issues, some digestion issues, and just overall just like being aware for the first time in my life that I wasn't feeling that well physically, you know, and even, you know, emotionally, knowing that I wasn't at my best and knowing that I just wasn't eating right, you know, and at that same time, I was educating myself a lot on nutrition and some spiritual matters as well, not as much as I would eventually end up, but I saw that I needed to make a change in my life because of this health issue I was having that was like totally destroying my life.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I thought was like super cool about you is because you're pretty open with the self exploration. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like
totally.
And it's super interesting to me. I mean, that's all. It's always dope for me to hear like other people's perspectives on life and like what they're going through or what they deem necessary for themselves to become like a better human being, right?
Yeah, man. That I completely. So for me at 19, I had through crisis, I was forced to become aware that I needed to make some changes. So I had older brothers who were vegetarians. Not all of them, but two of them were. Mm-hmm. And when I was going through these issues, I tried going the Western medicine route first, going to doctors. They were giving me prescription medication. None of it was working. Gave it a good try for like 6 months, and then was just like, nah, I'm going to take my power back and see what I can do myself. Because as I said, going to Jamaica, I had grandparents who knew how to go into the bush, what they call the jungle or the forest in Jamaica. And if someone had a stomach ache or someone had a fever, they knew which plant to go to harvest and make a tea from it, you know, or to make a tincture from it or whatever. So for me, something was kind of awakening within me at that age to tap back into that.
Well, what were you eating what was like kind of consistent of your diet that you think was
sad diet, man, standard American diet.
Yeah.
You know, everything that, you know, people eat, regular fast food, pizza, frozen pizza, McDonald's, all this garbage, despite my mother being the most amazing cook in the entire family, you know, like, and always making good, delicious things. I was just raised eating all this conventional garbage that we get fed.
Quick and easy things to eat.
Quick and easy things, you know, high sugar, high carbs, all that. So because of that, I got to that point where something was really screaming within my body to change my diet. So the first thing I did was a 3-day fast back in, 2012. That 3-day fast changed my entire life. I mean, that's a whole podcast in and of itself. But did this 3-day fast. I was working at a pizza shop during my first fast ever. So it was like crazy temptations.
Yeah, and what are the stages of a fast? Like, what are the feelings that you kind of went through?
Well, you know, there's different kinds of fasts. At that point, it was just simply no food. I was drinking water and drinking tea and making some juices, but no food whatsoever. And for me, that first time, I had already begun changing a lot within my life, and I was already beginning to study a lot of esoteric and Eastern philosophy and spirituality. So for me, during that fast, I realized that fasting wasn't only fasting from food, but it was fasting from certain lifestyle activities or certain bad habits, you know? So for me, yeah, the not eating part was a little difficult, but everything else I was receiving that was like nourishing my spirit felt far more rewarding than the discomfort of not eating.
Yeah,
you know?
and you know, a lot of I've never personally fasted myself, but it definitely is something that that interests me for sure. But what are what are some of the things that you've noticed immediately after that fast? Like, you know, a lot of people say that they might have a little bit more energy, they feel a little bit more clear. Yeah. What were some of the things that you noticed?
For me, man, right away, it was more energy and clarity, but it was a different, I don't want to sound woo-woo or anything, but that my body was literally on a different vibration. Yeah. And I bring it up because it all relates to answering your question about my travels, is that after I did that 3-day fast, I could no longer eat meat. I tried afterwards. I did the fast. I felt like I cleansed. I felt like I had a lot more energy. I felt like at that point, my stomach was straight, and I had tried to eat meat again.
And it was just rejecting it.
Completely, pretty obviously rejecting it. It wasn't just some subtle shit, you know? So I became a vegetarian after that 3-day fast, and a couple months, 2 months later, I would do a 10-day fast. And after that, I was completely vegan. No dairy products, no animal products whatsoever. And that was in... at that point, that was 2012, and November of 2012 was when I finished my 10-day fast. And
still, it was only drinks, juices, water.
Yeah, I was making like fresh green juices. Okay. I was still getting a lot of nutrients, which people don't know. I mean, you could live off liquids for weeks at a time. So that 10-day fast is what really made things concrete for me. And that entire year, you know, after I turned 20 is when I would really say I had a spiritual revolution occur within me, where I started reading a lot, studying different things, going deeper into the philosophies and teachings that I was somewhat interested in as an adolescent, but having a higher level of maturity at that point to really delve deeper into it. So from all these studies I was doing of Eastern philosophy and spirituality, Native American traditions, South American culture, that's what made me learn about all these different places that I knew I would want to visit one day. So years of study and years of many different experiences, all while doing this music shit. Yeah. After I graduated Five Towns in 2015, at the start of 2016, I kind of felt a little... You know that feeling after you graduate college, for those who know, where you're just like, you haven't gotten a job yet. You still be at home. You're like, what do I do with my life?
Yeah, I remember, man. Yeah, isn't it crazy? Yeah, like when you get that piece of paper, like I was just like, all right, I'm done with school. Like this is no longer a part of my life. Yeah, except totally, for the money that I owe you.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, yo, I'm not trying to really just like get to hustling. On an employment level, like right away, like let me go. I got some money saved from, doing what I was doing back then. And I was just like, let me dip out somewhere. And at that time, for the past year and a half or so, I was really deep into studying ethnobotany and plant medicines and herbalism, and specifically entheogens, psychedelics, and how these other cultures would use these different sacred plants and their traditions and ceremonies. So I had a interest in traveling down to South America to participate in some of these ancient ceremonies.
Ayahuasca stuff?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And others. So in the top of 2016, I went down to Ecuador for my first time, and
that's where you're at mostly, right? You go to Ecuador a lot, I feel
it's like. It's my second home, man. Yeah.
That's awesome. And what was that experience like going? I mean, people, I'm sure most of the people know what ayahuasca is, but like, walk me through that ceremony and,
Yeah, man.
It's just interesting. I'm like, parts of me, after hearing about it for so many years, you're like, I got to try it, you know what I mean? But there's parts of me is just like, am I just trying? Parts of me is thinking like, am I just trying to say I'm trying it, or am I actually really somebody that is like, invested into this sort of self-exploration, and they're totally, like, truly benefiting from this rather than just being like, let's see what happens,
Yeah. Well, I'll just say right away, these plants deserve reverence. They're not recreational substances to be taken lightly. Yeah. Because there's thousands, tens of thousands of years of use for some of these plants, and they're not looked at as just plant matter down in these cultures that use them. They're looked at as guides and spirits and teachers. So for me, this is a topic that's really dear to my heart because I feel like there is so much confusion, misconceptions, and sheer ignorance about the use of these plants because of how we in the West tend to interact with substances. Yeah. In the West, it's it has become, because it has
very pleasure driven. It's like,
pleasure driven, superficial, simply wanting to shift states of being without actually having much intention behind what you're doing. Just taking mushrooms and running around the woods, or just tripping out and doing crazy shit. Like, and I'm not knocking any of that, because there is a time where these plant teachers could be used simply for fun, or for celebration, or for prayer. But a lot of people are using these plants for healing and for reflection and for remembrance of who they are themselves. So I think for myself, being what I consider an ambassador for these traditions and teachings, and someone who really has given the past 6 years of my life to these traditions, I'm careful with how much I share regarding certain things, because not everyone can understand this path. Yeah. And at the same time, it's like a paradox within me, because there's so much misunderstanding. There's an aspect of me that wants to share so much more about the beautiful things I have received from going down to Ecuador so much. Yeah.
And just briefly, the one of the dudes, Blank Noriega, David.
Yep.
David Noriega. You had him on your episode, right? He's a farmer in. He lives in Ecuador.
No, he lives in Maine. So that's one of my childhood friends who I grew up with in Long Island, and who eventually came down to Ecuador with me. Yeah, and had a life-changing.
That's what I'm saying. I remember I listened to the episode, and he goes into his ayahuasca experience and why he felt like he needed to reconnect with the earth.
Yeah,
and
totally,
things like that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and for example, I mean, someone like him, he was already beginning to make some similar changes in his life around the same time I was, and him and I really became, like, I would say, like, developmental partners. Like, he would always keep me in check, and I would keep him in check when it came to, like, our health or our spiritual growth or any of that. And for someone like him, I had already went down to Ecuador in 2016. Yeah. But I was letting him know how much of a transformational time I had, that he needed to come with me the next year. So to answer your question, how was my first experiences?
Life-changing.
Life-changing. Yeah. It was wild. It really showed me that there's so much more to this reality and to our existence than meets the eye. Yeah. And it really helped me see, what I always say is that it helped me remember. For me, this path of working with not only plant medicines, but just ancient ways of living, period, and living in a ceremonial fashion, is a path of remembrance for me. It really helped me see, like, oh, wow, this is in my blood. This is in not just my ancestry, not just these indigenous people's ancestry, but all of our ancestry. Simply sitting around a fire, listening to these sacred songs, drinking or eating a plant medicine that helps you connect with your heart and really, have to face some things within yourself, because there's no
distractions out there, right? It's just like you're in the jungle, you're in the jungle. You're
well, I was in the mountains. Many people are in the jungle.
Yeah, wherever your location is, you're there with nature, right? Yeah. So totally. It goes back to the Western world being a little bit more pleasure driven. It's not like like you said, let's go take mushrooms and go walk in the woods, like you just do, or whatever. Let's go take mushrooms and play paintball.
Ayahuasca is now recreational. Yeah. I mean, people are throwing up. People shit themselves. Yeah. I mean, people are crying. People are terrified. People are having the most divine ecstasy-like experience they've ever had in their life. It runs the gamut, and you don't know what you're going to get every time, you know, because it's such a powerful being, such a powerful plant, and has provided so much healing to those who are willing to do the work as well, that it's not something you would ever imagine doing outside of a real ceremonial setting, at least not for me, because that's the way that my teachers and elders have taught me, you know? So for me, yeah, man, it changed my life in a lot of ways, and I could really speak about it for hours on end.
Yeah.
I would love to speak more about it as well, but at the same time, there's certain experiences I've had for myself that are just for myself.
Yeah.
You know, that I can't really
explain because
so
nobody's going to be able to even understand. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
and there's certain levels to how you interact with this way of living. You know, for some people, I can have deeper conversations with, and I can have these conversations with you, but I'm regarding like the mass public. There's certain things that I would say differently to someone who has, you know, experienced these traditions and ceremonies compared to someone who like hasn't ever even smoked weed or something.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So I'm trying to be mindful of that. But yeah, it really just helped me come back to myself, and it awoke something within me. Like I always say, the first time I went to one of these ceremonies in Ecuador, I truly felt like I was home. Like I had this feeling of being so familiar with that setting. And I knew right away this is something that I want to do a lot more of. So after my first time there in 2016, I vowed that I would come back a year later. I ended up living there for 6 months, working at this ayahuasca retreat center.
Nice.
And got to see, like, you know, dozens of people travel from Australia, Israel, Japan, all these places just to do these ceremonies. Seen some really miraculous stuff that people probably wouldn't believe, stuff that I wouldn't have believed either. I mean, people who had crazy Parkinson's and can barely walk, and after 12 days, they're walking up mountains, no issue, or people who had, you know, some serious sexual abuse happen to them at a very young age, and they've never been able to process it, even with professional therapy for 10 years, then have one night with ayahuasca or one day with San Pedro, which is another medicine from down there, and really finally release that trauma, or at least begin to release it. And to see all these transformations, and to see people who were, you know, in a way worse scenario than I ever was when I first went there, and to see them heal so deeply, or begin their path to healing, really moved me in such a way where I said, wow, like there's so much knowledge to be learned from indigenous and ancient cultures that the West has either just disregarded or stolen, you know, because from my research during that time, I would come to find out, for example, let's say the pharmaceutical industry, how do they make these compounds? How do they make all these pills, all these alkaloids? Where are they getting them from? I was very interested, like how do they even find out the idea that they can make this product that is birth control, or make this cancer treatment, or this or that, you know?
Yeah.
And what I would come to learn is that over 70% of pharmaceutical medications can be traced back to having origins in plant medicine. And these pharmaceutical companies, many times in the past, especially in the 70s, 80s, and previously and after, would go down to the Amazon, learn what these tribes were using to treat certain ailments, identify those plants, take those plants, take them to the laboratory, isolate a certain compound or alkaloid, and then turn it into a pharmaceutical drug without ever compensating these indigenous tribes who taught them that these plant medicines contain these healing properties. So for me, being down there and seeing it firsthand, you know, and also having the history of, you know, my grandparents in Jamaica and my grandparents in Iran, who all knew basic herbalism. I mean, all of our ancestors did. I said, wow, this is something that I know from my life I want to re-educate myself on, because it's helping me reconnect with my natural essence. You know, you brought up you never fasted before, right?
Yeah.
In the past, humans had to fast. There was no choice. You didn't have a supermarket on every corner. You didn't have all this food stocked into shelves in your house. If you were hungry, you had to go hunt. If you were thirsty, you had to go find and retrieve water. You know, so fasting is part of our evolution. it's a big reason why there's so much illness today in our country and everywhere is because people just don't stop fucking eating, man. You know, and our bodies are designed to take a break from eating. So I bring all this up to say that these practices of not only how we eat, not only how we heal, but how we sing and pray and dance and just, you know, spend time with each other. Down in Ecuador, I received a lot of education and remembrance and nourishment from that. And it's why I continued to go down there, and I forged close relationships with some shamanic families down there, and who I would come to have become my teachers, my brothers, my sisters, and who would really teach me a lot of their ways and take me under their wing and teach me some of these deeper lessons that I've been interested in since going there. So that's why I continue to return there. And from there, a lot of my other travels have come as well, because I ended up meeting my girlfriend down there. She's from Sweden. She was just happened to be traveling through Ecuador, and we ran into each other and fell in love right away. And from there, I began to travel to Sweden a bunch. And then
what are some of your
other stuff.
What are some of your favorite countries that you've been to? Like, you know, you mentioned Ecuador, you mentioned Sweden.
Peru is one of my favorites. I'm so invested in my family that I formed down in Ecuador that, like, if I'm going anywhere lately, it's either Ecuador or Sweden, because that's where my loved ones are. But Peru has, like, such a deep place in my heart. There's a beautiful city called Cusco. It's where Machu Picchu is. And it's...
What's Machu Picchu?
Machu Picchu is an ancient Incan archaeological site that is just like... Just research it. I mean, it's like...
Yeah, I got you.
It's insane what these indigenous people were able to build.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't people who were just running around the jungle or mountains. I mean, these were high mathematicians and scientists, and you see it when you're there. So Cusco is one of my favorite places on the planet. I love going to Sweden as well, because the culture there is... the culture is cool, if I'm being honest, but the country itself is beautiful.
Yeah.
And the society is beautiful. The way they actually run their country is amazing. You know, I like to see how clean things are there and how well taken care of the citizens are. So Sweden's great. Jamaica, obviously, because that's like my roots.
Yeah.
I feel a certain level of energy that I don't feel anywhere else when I go to Jamaica, and that's probably just because, like, all the ital eating, which is like what how the Rastas eat, you know, just no pure vegetarian, vegan, you know, all the fruits. I love Jamaica. Everywhere, man. I got a lot of places on my list too.
Me too. I got a lot of places I need to go. I've only checked off 2. I've been to Costa Rica, and then I've been to Paris.
Dope.
I love Paris. I could live in Paris. I really, especially where I was at.
Shout out my boy Jay Hart.
yeah. Shout out Jay Hart. Yep.
Word.
We might have to get him on here one day.
Yeah,
he's always working with what's his name, Aaron.
Yeah.
Aaron.
Jay Hart's my brother, man.
Yeah, Jay Hart's cool.
That's a real good dude.
I met Jay Hart a couple years ago, but the last time, I mean, I saw him before that, but the last time I've like worked with him was the Radimus like off top freestyle that I set up with him and Mark.
Yo, that freestyle
was crazy, right?
Crazy, bro. Yo, he actually references ayahuasca in that freestyle.
Yeah. My roommate and I made that beat, dude. I remember when we were...
You guys made that?
Yeah.
Damn, bro.
Me and my boy. It was mostly my boy John. I just helped in a couple of little spots, you know what I mean? But yeah, he like came over and recorded that verse, and I was just like, bro, this is nice.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. This shit was wild.
But nah, Paris, that's dope. I haven't been. I would love to go.
It was dope, man. I stayed in the... I guess they're considered like assortments. I stayed in the 10th, which was like not too far from like the Eiffel Tower and all that, but it felt very, you know, because I've lived in New York for so long that I just compare every other city I go to New York. Is it like better than New York, you know? And when I was walking around, I got the very much like New York vibe. I like the city, you know what I mean? I like being able to duck away to the country when I want to, but I need to be like, I'm one of those people that needs to be like stimulated kind of like with the things that are going on around me. You know what I mean? I can't take too much isolation.
Yeah,
I start to like get a little wild, you know, a little crazy.
Yeah, I'm like the opposite, man.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, being raised as a New Yorker, even though I grew up in LA, I mean, I was always coming to the city and the boroughs. Like, I don't know, there's a certain amount of nourishment I receive from being in the city, for sure, and I need it every now and then, but lately in these recent years, man, just
It's
the
too
nature
much.
is my vibe.
I feel it. Yeah, no, it's a weird. It's like it's a weird. It's a love-hate relationship. There's been other cities that I've thought about leaving and going to, but yeah, I don't know, man. It's just interesting, you know what I mean? That people, but it's just like because I feel like I've always enjoyed the city, but I appreciate nature so much more when I get to go away. You know, I get to like get out and explore rather than like being it all the time. Because I have family in like upstate New York that live in the middle of nowhere, you know, in the woods. There's plenty of hiking, there's plenty of, you know, fishing and hunting and things like that I've participated in. But it's just, something about the people around me. But in my personal, it's weird because like I like being around a lot of people in the city, just in general, and being around like all the creative people. But I'm very much by myself, like a solo type of person. Like I'll show up to events by myself. You know what I mean? Like
you used to be on the bike, man.
Yeah, I'm
still
always
on the bike
every day, man.
Okay, fire, man.
Every day, I'm still on the bike every day, man.
Dope, man.
Putting miles in.
Hell yeah.
I do some work on a bike, so like I'm out I'm out
No
5
doubt.
days a week, just like cruising the boroughs. You know what I mean?
Man.
So it was dope. But you do a lot of like documentation of these travels too, which is really dope. And it's something I wanted to talk to you about because you have different like forms of mediums. You know, you got you got your director work, you got your photography work, you know, film, stuff like that. I wanted to like kind of pick your brain a little bit because my favorite stuff of yours is the portraits.
Dope. I was hoping you were going to say that or anything photography related.
Yeah. So I'm like a big fan. I don't know if I know I watched your like introduction to your podcast, which again we'll talk about in a minute here. But one of the things you said was that you love listening to podcasts and like that's like where you draw like a lot of your inspiration from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't know if you're familiar with this podcast called Soft White Underbelly.
No.
Okay. I think you'll really like this.
Please, man, put me on.
Check it out. It's done by this dude Mark. I forgot his last name, but he lives on. Or he shoots off of Skid Row, and like basically it's portrait style interviews where you're just getting background on like he interviews homeless people, pimps, prostitutes, schizophrenics, people with mental issues, mothers and little people like young kids that are homeless, like all types of shit, pimps, all that stuff. But it's profiles.
He's taking photographs of them as well, or he's just like focusing.
He focuses on it's just like a straight up interview, like on a with a backdrop. But like in the middle of the interview, he does like these slow pans like up and down of the person while they're talking. Okay. But it's just like a deep dive into all types of people that in around the world. He travels around the country and does interviews and whatever. Yeah. But I think it's something that you'll really enjoy. You should check it out.
Thank you, man.
But what I was getting to was my favorite type of work, and one of the stuff that some of the things that I really liked with yours were your portraits. Yeah. And portraits for me are some of my favorite types of photos because. Like, I don't know, like when you look at a portrait, you can kind of, for me personally, I'm like, what does this person sound like? What's their like vibe like? You know what I mean? Yeah. There's a lot of things you can get or, a
lot of information.
There's a lot of information. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You said it much better than I could. There's a lot more information in the eyes than necessarily like a video. I feel like you get a little bit more of like a...
Definitely, man. Yeah. And just off rip, I gotta credit my big bro, Khalik Allah, because he's the portraiture god. Yeah. And he's the one who got me into photography, even just indirectly just by watching him kill it, So for me, I am a portraiture photographer. That's what I consider myself as, because I take photos of everything, concerts, nature, lifestyle, but I'm really into documenting people in a candid way as well, because I'm not like a posed kind of photographer. Even the portraits I take are somewhat candid and sometimes completely candid, because for me, photography is like the art outside of everything, music, video, all this other stuff I do that I've really been most passionate about. I would say not more than music, but in a very different way. I don't get the same kinds of nourishment from the both of them. For me, photography, period, but taking portraits is like something sacred. And I learned that from my older brother, because to get someone to feel comfortable enough to really relax, I mean, you could take a portrait of anyone and it could show whatever emotional state they're in. But to get that level of trust between somebody is like, it's sacred, you know. And someone put it to me recently that I did some photos for in Ecuador, who told me like, oh, these are the best photos I ever had taken of me. Like, oh my God, and this is like someone who is now a dear friend of mine, but has done a lot of acting and modeling and all this stuff. And she told me, she said, the difference between your photos and others is that I'm seeing what you see in the photo. And I was like, or I'm paraphrasing a bit, but I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, I can see the beauty that you see when you take the photo, meaning the photos I take and that she helped me articulate is not only like my perspective of life, you know, that's a cliche thing to say as a photographer, but it's really an accurate representation of what I'm feeling in that moment. And I try to not only take my photos, but edit my photos in that way that really encapsulate what I'm feeling in my heart for that person. It's why you don't see so many photos of random people on my website or
it seems like it's
all relational.
Yeah.
People I know.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I'll probably get into photographing more people I don't know, maybe more street stuff, and I have a good amount of that stuff, but not as much as I do of people who I have made relationships with, you know? So
yeah. No, yeah, that was just one thing I definitely wanted to touch on. Because it's kind of, you know, the idea of this podcast is, you know, I want to cater it more towards like investigative journalism, kind of like diving into the people's lives and taking a dive into people's lives and like, you know, eventually like going places with them and living their life for, you know, for whatever it may be, you know. But it's good. It goes kind of hand in hand with the photography, with the portrait style photography for me, because it's like you're without words putting an image out to a masked amount of people for them to decipher and to feel what they feel, and everybody feels something different. I just think it's like it's dope to highlight those types of things, you know.
Yeah, totally.
And then, you know, it goes hand in hand with the podcast that you have, the Masters of Ceremony podcast, which I did some research. I was going to ask you why you called it Masters of Ceremony, but then I listened to the intro and you talk about it like relating to MC. Talk to me, you know, about because you said you were thinking on it for a couple of years where you wanted to do this. What was the idea behind this podcast and your podcast, and what was the goal that you wanted to achieve with it? Yeah,
man. Thank you for asking. For me, it was very similar to the fifth tape. I really wanted, but for myself, like the fifth tape was like, I got all these 15 artists I know, I want to bring them together.
Yeah.
For me, Masters of Ceremony was like, I got these 15 artists within myself. I want to bring them together into one platform. I'm like, how do I merge all of my passions into one thing? Oh, it's probably me not only speaking about it myself, but also interviewing people who are not only experts in their fields, but passionate artists in their fields. So for me, Masters of Ceremony, the name is a double entendre. It is relating to MCs, you know, of hip hop, but also Masters of Ceremony, relating to all this indigenous, ancient ceremonial work that I've been committing myself to in South America.
Yeah. And do you, sorry.
No, please.
Do you consider it the act of like, say what we're doing, like the act of sitting across from somebody and having like a conversation, that in itself is a ceremony?
Totally, man. Right? I say often, and I'm not exaggerating this, from a good conversation with somebody, I can feel so nourished that I don't feel the need to eat.
Yeah.
You know what it feels like to have a really dope conversation with somebody, and there's this level of satiation afterwards where you're just like,
yeah,
I needed that. That's sacred. That's ceremonial, you know. And to go deeper into the hip hop aspect of it, just like think about a cipher or just kicking freestyles with your homies or just like being on stage. That's all very ceremonial and ancient in a way, whether people are aware of that or not. So for me, MOC was a podcast where I wanted to really speak on all these different things that have influenced me throughout my life: photography, art, shamanism and plant medicines, hip hop, filmmaking, everything, you know. And for me, as I say at some point, you said you heard it somewhere, I've been listening to podcasts for years now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gotten really popular in the past 2-3 years, but I've been listening to podcasts for a while now because I live in LI and I love to drive. And I used to have a delivery job where I was driving so much, and I used to have to commute for school and everything. I'm just always in my car. And sometimes I didn't want to always listen to music, and that's how I got into podcasts.
Yep,
you know?
I was the same way.
Yeah,
like,
on the bike, I'm sure. Man.
Yeah, not even on the mostly. Well, when I'm chilling on the, like, not when I'm riding, but I'll like post up in a park and I'll watch something, right?
No doubt.
But when I'm in my car and I'm going upstate and I got like a 4-hour drive, or you know, I might be on the plane or something like that. It's really nice, just to sit back and like just hear somebody speak and listen to this,
especially if it's something informative and educating. Like I was like, wow, I could learn about, I don't know, quantum physics by listening to this podcast for an hour, like crazy stuff like that. Or I could listen to my favorite artists give an interview. Like, so I fell in love with podcasts, and I learned so much through that medium, because there's no other medium like podcasting. Every other medium, you need to really engage with it visually in some way. You know, if it comes regards to reading a book or watching a movie or a TV show or even a video interview. But a podcast, you could wash the dishes and listen to, you could drive and listen to, you could be on the bike. So you have all that time that's been freed up to be able to invest into just listening to people. So I knew, just from how much I love to have conversations, that I wanted to create a platform where I could do that, you know. And it's crazy to say, and I'm not ashamed of it, because there's been good reason and it's been intentional, but it's been a year since I've even released an episode on my podcast.
Yeah, I saw that. I was going to ask you about
It's been a minute. And
you know, I figured it was travel. And
it was travel. It was as simple as that. I mean, it got to a point where, I mean, you know, we got these mics here. You got the camera set up. I don't know how much of the work you're doing. I'm assuming most of it.
Yeah,
all of it.
It's pretty simple setup. You know, there's no real editing to it.
Yeah, so
you know.
for me, I was doing a 2-microphone setup.
Yeah.
And I went to school for audio engineering, so I focus on the audio heavy. I'm mixing and mastering the audio myself.
Yeah.
I have a 2-camera setup, because I'm doing majority of my podcasts like this in person. 2-camera setup. I'm filming everything myself. I have no assistant. You know, I'm watching levels and reading card spaces and all that during it. Very sly. I don't think anyone sees me doing it, but I'm, you know, doing it in a good way. And then I'm going home and I'm mixing and mastering all the audio.
Yep.
I'm syncing it with the video, you know, with a 2-camera setup. I
mean,
it
gets a little tricky.
Time.
The editing, it's so. Oh man.
I mean, the multi-sequence program on Adobe Premiere saved me hours. Eventually, when I learned.
Oh, really?
There's
okay. I might have to learn about that. I'm using.
It still takes time though. You have to at least watch the entire episode at the very least. But there's more edits than that. So doing all that, and then transcribing the episodes, because I like to have subtitles for the clips I use on Instagram.
A lot. Yeah, that's a lot.
Crazy time. So I was doing all that myself. No one helping me. All of that. You know, coloring, post-production in the video, all that. So after a minute, when I began to know that I had some travels coming up, it just wasn't viable for me to be on it as much as I was.
Yeah.
So I said consciously, I'm going to take a step back, because for me, Masters of Ceremony is a lifelong podcast. That's not going anywhere. And I never felt the pressure to release an episode every week, or, you know, even every month, even though I wanted to be at that point, if I'm being honest. But I've been flexible enough with that project to know that it is a lifelong project for me. So to take a year off is nothing for me. I mean, I spent 5 years on the 5th tape.
Yeah.
And I think people really enjoyed that podcast and are going to continue to see the episodes
dope.
I got coming next.
Nice.
I have a lot of stuff in the stash even right now that's ready to go. I'm just waiting for the right time.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing, man, is like keeping things going sometimes, you know. And a lot of people seem, you know, from the outside looking in, it's like, oh, you're only just shooting an episode, you know, you're only meeting up with somebody to have a conversation. But there's times where I'm sure you and I know where I felt like this, where I'm just like, I just don't want to do it, man. Like I just don't want to do it. I
feel that with the editing sometimes. The conversations I can have all day.
Exactly. It's like the you know, if it was just like, oh, we had a conversation, it was boom, it was uploaded right now, it would be like whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But there's some times, man, where you're just like, and there was moments where I'm in the place where I'm in that position where it was like, yo, I gotta at least do 3 episodes a month, because it's like, I want people, and I know I could do more. You know what I'm saying? But it's just like, it's like finding that balance. And you seem to have it under control, where you don't feel like the pressure, because you say that that's going to be like a lifelong thing. And, you know, I do this podcast too as just like a means of having content for myself and something that I created on my own. But yeah, it's like hard finding that balance of like, I want this to be successful, but it's not my main focus. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about how many subscribers I have. I don't care about how many views my video got. Because every time I upload a new episode, I might get 2 or 3, 4 or 5, maybe 6 at the most new followers. That's cool enough for me. You know what I mean? But it's
likewise,
just like,
man.
Yeah.
And for me, if I'm being honest, I want to work to the point of like that podcast being the main thing I do.
Me too.
One of the main things. I do,
me too.
And I'm willing to do the Zoom podcast because I got some of those as well, because that allows you to connect with people who you wouldn't otherwise be able to connect with. You know, but for me, I'm a visual person. For me, I don't know about you, but if I'm driving or moving, I like to listen to a podcast. But if I'm stationary and there's a video version, I will always watch the video version.
Yeah.
Because I want to see the interaction. I want to see the body language, all that, the jokes in person. It just looks better. You know?
Yep.
So, it's a lot, though, to be filming and editing and doing all that, especially by yourself. So for me, I want to streamline my process somehow to be a little bit smoother where I can crank out episodes and not have to spend, you know, days on end just preparing them.
Yeah.
Or at least have some help, maybe. I don't know.
Well, there's studios. I forgot the name of the studio, but these guys on it. Well, one of the dudes who I had on my show is dude Alex. He was part of the Button podcast. I think he's still there. He's the computer guy. He's doing all like the searching and shit while they're talking or whatever. Dope. And he came on, and they use a space out of Bushwick. Forgot the name of it, man, but it's a really dope setup. It's like made for podcasts. It's got like screens behind you.
Okay,
they got like the cloud roof and all that.
Yeah.
But I think within their fee, it's a little bit pricier on like the price range or whatever. But like within their fee, they provide you with an editor. And I think it's edited right then and there.
Yeah, probably they got it streamlined. So
you just
cameras
leave,
are switching all that.
Yeah. You just leave with it. You just bring a memory card and you just leave with that. It's all in there.
Yeah. Damn,
so
that's fire, man.
It's it's just something that you could think of if you ever want to shoot over here or something.
Yeah, if I'm local, man, for sure. And I mean, I was doing all my podcasts out here in Brooklyn, even though I live out east in Long Island. But for me, I'm moving around so much, and I'm about to prepare to be moving around even more so that I do see probably my podcast flipping to being more of an online interview situation. And when I am here in New York or in the States, I'll be doing them in person. And when I'm down in Ecuador, I got some people who I'm looking forward to making some episodes with, and that'll be like in person on video with, you know, so.
Yeah, I another episode that I watched another artist that was on your podcast that I like went and looked up her music was that Annie Trezza.
Ah, dope.
Annie Trezza?
Yeah,
that
Annie's a high school friend from mine.
Yeah.
She's great.
That interview was super cool, man. It was just like out of the back of a van, like I assume on a beach.
Yeah, it was close to a beach.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It seemed like that's the vibe. That's the vibe I was getting. You know?
Yeah,
what I mean?
man, that's something I want to do more of as well. Especially with the Blank Noriega podcast as well, like being outside recording, because I'm confident enough in my audio engineering and setup skills that I can record outside and it not be sounding like trash. You know, as long as you know some pretty basic things, you can get a really good recording outdoors. And for me, the Annie Trezza episode and Blank's episode were like two of my favorites because it was like me and Annie were chilling in the back of her van.
Yeah, it seemed like more your vibe.
Me and Dave were like chilling in this crazy wind tarp vessel out in New Hampshire. Yeah, man, as you said, I want to be mobile with everything I do.
Well, this thing right here, man, I always tell people
it's fire, man. I've been checking it out.
It's called the Roadcaster, bro, and it's literally everything you need built into one thing, man. It's got all the channels, you got the USB hookups, all that, but you're able to travel with it. You know what I mean? I got a little case for it, and I can pop up wherever I want as long as I have a power outlet. You know?
Yeah, for me, man, I use a Zoom H6.
Yep.
You don't even need a power outlet for that.
Word.
So for me, that's like.
Yeah, I was originally recording on Logic, like through a computer, but then I people would like bump the desk or something and the cord would come loose.
I'm too scared to do that on a computer, because honestly, you could do some crazy things with the quality and setup with that. But for me, using that Roadcaster or an H6, you're getting just as good quality. And it's like everything's being recorded directly straight away. For me, if like Pro Tools or Logic glitches or something and the recording stops, I'm gonna be tight, you know. So
no, dude, it's trust me. There's been times where I had guests on and I was like, you had to like start the interview over.
Oh,
you know,
man.
maybe like 15 minutes into it, or you know, sometimes you get the sirens in the back or whatever.
All good. It's authentic, man.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? We're on the main block or whatever. I do want to talk about some of the features that you've had. You know, some of the things you've been featured in.
Yep.
The one that I definitely wanted to highlight was New York Times. Mm-hmm. That's like that's a prestigious newspaper, news company to be affiliated with. What were you featured in about that? Was it your photography?
Yeah, it was a portrait of my big brother, Andrew Askaripour. He is a New York Times bestseller for his debut novel, Black Buck, which is out now.
Okay, shout out.
Everybody go grab that. He asked me to do some author photos for him sometime before the book came out. Mm-hmm. And New York Times ended up using one of our photos, and that was a huge accomplishment of mine. You know, it was a big thing to check off my list, honestly. So, yeah.
So I didn't want to ask you this off the top or when we were talking about the music and stuff, but for some reason, like we were talking about things that you've worked on, you know, videos you've directed, you've worked with some of the ASAP members, right?
Yeah, 12E.
12E, yep. Okay. And I want to say I remember this, or somebody, I don't think you told me this, but I think I might have heard it through like Radimus or Madwiz, one of these dudes. But at one point, were you working on the Beyonce album?
Lemonade.
Yes.
Yeah, indirectly. Again, big shout out to my older brother.
Let's talk about that for a little
my
bit. My
physical blood brothers are legends, man.
Yeah, it was her birthday the other day.
Oh, really?
Or today or some shit.
Oh, damn. I didn't even I'm not that clued in.
Yeah, I saw it on Instagram, Complex or whatever. But yeah, like tell me about that, because that's insane.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean?
I thought it's so funny. I was just reflecting on that yesterday, actually, because essentially I was down in South by Southwest. I'm terrible with years because like my journey's been crazy the past like 5 years, but I think I don't know, maybe 2018 or something. Probably 2018. Actually, no. I remember now. It was 2016. I was down South by Southwest with the whole Mogul Club.
Was this? I don't know if you paid attention to the story. What's his name? Riz told us on his episode where everybody was like sleeping and ended up having to sleep in like college dorms or some shit. The rooms were all messed up.
In South by?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I ended up dipping to do the Beyonce job.
Yeah.
So I basically. It was a crazy journey. We were in a crazy Sprinter van with some other cats.
Riz said he was like, there was one moment where he wanted to cry in the shower.
Yeah, there was some dangerous moments even traveling down to South by. We drove 33 hours to get there.
Damn, bro.
And I remember on the drive there, and once I got there, just to be honest, like I loved being with the homies. It wasn't the homies at all. There were some other things going on where I was like, yo, I'm not really feeling the vibe here so much.
Yeah.
And actually in that exact moment where I was like, yo, I don't want to drive back with all these people. And I'm not talking about Mogul, you know. I'm not talking about anyone who was there specifically, but just like the whole energy of driving in the whip, and there were things in the car that we could potentially get in trouble with, and all this stuff. Like, I'm like, yo, I prefer not to like go through this again. In that exact moment, my older brother Khalid called me and said that Beyonce's people had discovered some of his work and wanted to hire him for serving as an assistant director on her film Lemonade.
Yeah.
So he was asked to bring an assistant with him. So he chose me, you know, because him and I had done previous work together. We worked on a film called Black Mother that we made together in Jamaica. We've worked on other films of his. He's an internationally known filmmaker and photographer. He's crazy with it. But he brought me on the Beyonce job, and I just served as an assistant to him while he was shooting.
Yeah.
So his job and our job were just to like run around New Orleans and capture crazy footage in the streets, like in the hood, on like real old school film. He had 16 millimeter Bowflex and all this other stuff. So I basically just assisted him. I didn't get to meet Beyonce. He saw her on a previous shoot because he actually did 2 sessions for that film. And when we were shooting, we had no idea how much they were going to use. But if you watch that film, any of the shots that looked like old school film, that was all me and my brother.
Word.
And we were shocked at how much they actually actually relied on that footage and used it.
Yeah, because you didn't have it on your website, so I was just like,
yeah, I should probably throw it up there, but I got paid for it.
Yeah,
it wasn't like I was just only there.
Yeah,
I got contracted for it, but Big Bro is really the one who was responsible for shooting all that stuff and bringing me on the job. And what's crazy about that is I had lost some money in an unfortunate way.
Yeah.
Right before that job, and the payment I got from that job was the exact amount of money that I had lost, like to the dollar. And it wasn't like a average amount of money.
Yeah.
So it was crazy. You know? So that was a big blessing for me, man.
That's wild, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was like, I don't know. I was looking at your website, and I was just like, I know I heard this before, but I didn't want to like bring it up on air. And
I should probably throw it up there just for clout.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Get a little clout.
Sometimes
do a little memory post, like a post on Throwback Thursday, like, remember the time
I have people telling me to do stuff like that all the time. Yeah. At the end of the day, like, I don't know. I try to be as humble as possible, and I try to really stand on my own art, because I do have so many family members and friends who have really helped put me in great positions to achieve some great things. But I don't ever want to just like piggyback too much off that. I'm at a point in my career where I'm trying to produce art and content and share more of who I am and allow that art to be interfaced with who I am, you know? So I'm really hoping to produce some of my own films and more albums, not like the Fifth Tape. I mean, some like the Fifth Tape, but probably some that people wouldn't expect from me.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, just keep on creating.
What's next for you in the travels? Where are you headed next?
In the travels, I am going to Sweden next. Right. You know, me and my lady have been in a 5.5-year long-term relationship, and we've made it work in an incredible way. And it's gotten to that point though where it's time to be together a little bit more long-term, same location, get an apartment together.
Yeah.
That's not something that I've announced publicly so much. I guess I will now, but I'll be there for some time. Who knows? I'm always moving around, but for me, starting like family life, even at a young age, is something I want to do, while also not sacrificing my own
personal journey.
Yeah, my own journey and goals and dreams, and that's like, for me, that's what a true partner is going to do for you, is she or he is going to support you in what you're trying to achieve, and vice versa. And that's what I have, thank God, in my relationship. Someone who really loves me for who I am, sees what I want to do, and is there for me completely. So for me, I benefit by having a partner like that, and I benefit from being there in person, So that's the next move. But then Ecuador again as well. That's like, I've been to Ecuador 3 times within this year alone. Yeah. I've traveled to like, I don't know how many countries, maybe 4 or 5 countries during this entire pandemic. I didn't let this pandemic stop me from doing these different things I've wanted to do for some time now. So I say that to say I'm always going to keep on moving no matter what's going on.
Yeah. Shit, man. It's a lot. There's so much more that I could pick your brain about. But I just want to thank you for coming in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, man. Of course. If you have any more time, I'm down. I don't know if you do or not.
Let's see. I gotta get out of here in like 20, 30 minutes. Doubt. But what's some of the? Let's see what the other notes I got from you. We talked about working with Mogul Club, Lemonade album, favorite country. Who are some of like the guests like going back to the podcast before we get out of here, who are some guests that you would like to see? And I'm sure you got like a list, because I know I have a list of people that I would like to have.
Of guests I haven't had on yet?
Yeah, of guests you haven't had on, people that you're trying to reach out to, or that you would like to interview.
There's people who I haven't reached out to yet that I know if I do reach out to, I can get them on. Like, I would love to interview Vidon. I feel like he is like one of the illest producers out in recent years, and has like made so much of an impact that. And he's a quiet dude, and a very humble dude. I feel like he deserves a little bit more of an opportunity to kind of speak more about his journey. So definitely Vidon.
Does he do a lot of interviews or?
Nah, not at all.
A lot of, I try not to call these interviews really.
Yeah, conversations. He has some stuff out there, but Vidon, the homie for sure. I mean, rappers and stuff, I could think of many, but I want to like interview different like medicine men and people who are into ceremony and people who are, you know, doctors in certain fields and experts on fitness and, you know, different spiritual leaders. And I really want to balance my podcast out because the episodes I have now are more geared towards music and art. And I want a little bit more holistic spirituality, that whole other aspect of myself that people don't get to see too often. I want to really shed light on that more. So,
the same with me too. Like with this podcast, like a lot of people who I've had on tend to be leaning more towards like the music creative marketing thing. But I mean, it's just because I feel like those are the types of people that we're kind of like surrounded by. Yeah, totally. You know what I mean? Yeah. But same thing, like, there's some interviews that I'm working on that I really want to get done. There's this really interesting one. I won't mention his name, but there's this dude who recently received clemency. He was in jail for like 40 years or something like that for a crime he didn't commit. Damn. And he just got out, and I'm like in the process of like trying to do something with him, but he's like super, I mean, he's getting a lot of like press right now and stuff like that. And we're trying to find a way to like make it, you know, comfortable for him. And, you know, there's a lot of shit that you gotta discuss beforehand before you can even do it. But that's like, again, like, I think we're kind of like on the same page with where we want our podcast to go. Yeah, you know, to show people the different side of you and you know, and to show the different things that you're interested in. Yeah, of
course. And for me as well, with being respectful of certain people's journey, there's a lot of conversations I want to have with people that I would actually never push record on. Yeah. You know, especially some of my friends and teachers down in South America. There's certain conversations that I want to record just for myself because there's like sensitive aspects of certain people's journeys or certain people's traditions that I'm not at leisure to share with everybody else. So that's another thing I've been going through with this podcast. Is like, there's certain conversations I want to have with certain people, but I know I'm only going to allow it to go so far because I'm not going to be one of those podcasters who's like trying to get the information out of someone that is like personal to them, you know, like, I'm not one of these, I'm not going to name any names, but you know what I mean? So
yeah, the rumor report type shit.
Yeah, totally. Or just like trying to grab information that I know, like, you have to earn. Yeah. You know, it goes back to what I was saying about the plant medicine stuff. You know, there's certain things that I feel like if you want to learn about, you go to those places. You know, I was taught that at a young age regarding that path. And it's like the same thing with like even hip hop. You want to learn about this culture, you got to be in it. You can't just only read about it, you know, or listen to it. So, yeah, man. But thank you for having me on.
Yo, I appreciate you coming in, man. Yeah, I don't even remember the last time I even had the chance to see you. It was
probably at a show or something.
Probably. You know what it probably was? Were you at the listening party for the Rad album?
Yeah, it was
in the spot in Chelsea.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that might have been the last time I saw you, bro. Right.
That wasn't so long. It wasn't like 4
maybe
years
maybe
ago.
I have seen you before after that.
I don't know.
It's weird. The pandemic, bro. The shit,
man.
I don't know what, you know what I mean. Like people mentioned the other day it was a year and a half. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been a blur. Yeah, for me, man. And I've just been, like Kendrick said, I've been ducking the pandemic, man.
Ducking those overnight activists, you know what I'm saying? Like,
real talk, man. We didn't even go into any current events or anything.
Nah, we didn't.
But I love it.
I mean, shit. You know, there's plenty of music that has dropped.
I mean, we don't even need to.
No, we don't have to go into that.
But there's a lot of good music out right now. And I'm happy at the state of hip hop.
Yeah, there's a lot of good shit. I will tell you to look at this. Check out this one album. I'll send it to you after this. But this dude Jameson, I think he put the best project out of all the big release. Yeah, man. Please, just sonically put together well. I'd love to see. He's dope. He's super dope. He's coming to New York soon too.
What's his name?
Jameson.
JMSN. Oh, okay, dope. I'm familiar with him, but I'm familiar with him through Ab Soul. Yeah, that's how I found out about it.
Yeah, but he's like soul funk. Like plays every instrument on stage type shit. It's a really dope project.
Jameson,
but yo, Andrew,
my brother,
thank you for coming in, man. I appreciate it.
I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. We almost got all the Mogul Club in here, like I told you.
Man, we're gonna do a group interview at some point.
One day, yeah, for sure.
Hell yeah, man.
Hell yeah.